That is incredible. Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So in this video, it's the third of my trilogy of videos from Madeira, and it's by the ocean. And I wanted to show you just a short section of video that I did on a lazy morning when I was just photographing some stunning crashing waves in the morning sunlight, and then talk a little bit further about some other things, some of the shots that I took in Madeira of some sea stacks, but also how I go about shooting waves, shooting seascapes, and 5 tips that I use all the time. I've sort of thought about the things that I do most often and what's most important. And I've also got a bonus tip from Rachel Talibar. I was speaking to her and she's given me a really useful tip for doing seascape photography. So I was staying in this little hotel by the ocean. I could actually throw a pebble into the ocean. It was absolutely amazing. And just down from there was this section that I could see this amazing lighthouse, the waves crashing. And I decided just to go there after breakfast. It was super easy. I wanted a lazy morning and see what I could get. So we'll join me there just before sunrise. Oh, I am having a relaxing morning this morning. I didn't get a takeaway breakfast, so I've had my breakfast. It's about 7:30 and I'm here for sunrise actually. And I'm staying in this hotel, which is quite amazing. It's got these natural pools rather than a swimming pool, and the tide comes in, fills them in, and then you can swim in those. It looks really amazing. Unfortunately, the tide's been so rough recently that nobody's been able to use them, but there's hardly anybody here. So, and it's not super warm, but it's about 18 degrees C. So yeah, I'm going to take the sunset here. I was here yesterday in the middle of the day taking some shots of the waves crashing. They're not quite as big as they were yesterday. The forecast looks good, but to be honest, the forecast is so difficult, I think, on Madeira because it's the island in this middle of the Atlantic Ocean and it just changes so rapidly. Okay, right, I'm going to take a shot of this, I think, and hopefully the sky's going to light up any minute, so I better get on. I'll get back to you when I've set my shot up. Okay, so I've got a wide shot of them at the moment. I'm going to do some wide shots and I'm going to do some close-up shots as well with my 70-200. So I'm shooting around about 35 millimeters, just a standard shot really of this. The cloud doesn't look like it's going to light up. It is about 8 minutes before sunrise and I think there's blanket cloud on the horizon, which is a shame. But there's 2 different shutter speeds that I need to be thinking about here. So there's one shutter speed for when the water comes over the rocks, which is about ½ a second. That captures just this really nice lines in the water. And there's another shutter speed for when the water sort of crashes and the waves crash outside at sea, and they look better around about 1,000th of a second. That is incredible. Okay, so as you can see over here, the light has definitely come out and it's catching the waves. This is so amazing. So what I've got is, I'm hand holding my 70-200 now, and I'm doing some really tight up close ones to the waves where the incoming wave is hitting the outgoing wave and it just goes smashing into the air like that there and just creates this amazing sort of, I don't know, sort of cascade of wave over. There's a few things that are really important. So the first thing is that I find for those waves you've got to have it on a super fast shutter speed, probably a 2,000th of a second. And then the other thing is, with the light catching it, you can't rely on the histogram because the histogram looks like it's okay, but as it goes in the air it catches more light. So you've got to underexpose it by almost 2 stops. So I'm I don't want to blow out the highlights because the highlights contain all the detail in the wave, which is so important. Looks like the sun's just going in, so I'm just going to carry on taking some shots. Right, okay, so I've focused on the spot. I know it's going to break, so I'm not worried about focus too much. And then I'm just going to lock that into manual focus. And then it's just a question of waiting for one and just getting it. So here's one there. It looks dark when you look through the viewfinder. You've got to be so careful not to blow out those highlights though. Oh, that's amazing. But here's one. It's going to be a good one now. So as you can see, I had an amazing hour or so shooting those waves. It was so stunning. And I want to share these tips with you, but this isn't meant to be a definitive guide to seascape photography. It's meant to just be a few informal tips that may help you just get a little bit more out of that genre of photography. I feel that seascape photography is quite different than woodland or sort of big vista photography. I feel like it's more dynamic, you've got more changing elements, and because of that you can probably be a little bit more creative in this type of photography. And that's why I like it. I feel like it's something that I mess about with quite a lot. There's a lot of trial and error. I always come back when I do seascape photography with so many photos that are just useless. But I occasionally get those gems, and that's what makes it really rewarding and want to go back to it. The first one, and I touched on it in the video there, which is all about shutter speeds and how important shutter speeds are. And I think there's two key shutter speeds for me. There's the slower shutter speed, the sort of maybe a quarter of a second to a few seconds, and then there's a really fast shutter speed, where you're shooting maybe 1,000th of a second. I want to go through those two. There is a third one, which is a long exposure, which just flattens everything out, but that's not really my genre of photography, so I don't feel like I'm best to sort of talk about that because I don't do it very often. So I'm going to talk about those other two. So the first one is the slower shutter speed, and this tends to be when I'm shooting conditions where the water's coming in and maybe hitting a rock and then going back out again, or I'm shooting some rocks and the water from the tides coming in and then going back out again. And I usually, for that, shoot about 1/2 of a second. Now it does change, so this isn't a hard, fast rule. What I tend to do on location is start at 1/2 a second, then try a bit faster and a bit slower. But I find 1/2 a second works, and it gives me something like this shot here. And I like this. I like the textures in the water. If you go much slower than this, then it can look a bit messy like this shot. And if you go faster, then you can get something like this, which I feel it's not as soothing. It doesn't really tell the story of those moving waves so much. So for me, starting at 1/2 a second is a good bet for those shots where water is changing direction. Now you can use that for anything, so don't just use it for that, but that's what I tend to use it for. The other one is the fast shutter speed. So that's what I was doing when I had my long lens and the waves were crashing with the backlit, and I want to really capture those droplets of water. I want to really capture that dynamism. Dynamism, is that a word? Dynamism. I want to capture that dynamism, it's probably not a word, of the water as it comes in. And you can see that, in fact, I'll show you some shots on my iPad. Right, so if I just get my iPad here, you can see in these shots here, this is a 4,000th of a second, I've actually got these droplets of water. you know, it's capturing, you can see as well, this looks fantastic because it's backlit with a dark cloud as well, but you can see it's capturing these droplets of water so well. You know, this one is a 4,000th of a second again. In fact, I think I put it on shutter priority. No, I didn't. I did it on manual. I just set it on F5. That's how I did it. And I focused there. So you can see that these faster shutter speeds look really, really good for those waves that are crashing and throwing all the water up high. And I find also if you've just got a wave that's breaking and the wind's blowing the water back, again that faster shutter speed tends to work. Although I have had success with slower shutter speed with those types of shot as well. So again, it's not a rule, it's just some tips. The next thing to talk about is height and your height, because I think that is really important for seascape photography. Ideally, what I'd like to do is be much lower than I was up on that promenade there, because when I was there, I was shooting just slightly down at the waves, and I always feel if you want to make those waves look more majestic, then you want to be lower down and they'll tower up above the horizon line. So for instance, this shot here, you know, this was a really big wave, but it didn't look as majestic as it perhaps should have done. This was me testing things before I got the backlit sun on the wave. But if it had been lower down, it would have looked a lot better. So just as an example, here are a couple of waves. So if I just show you some shots that I think that works a bit better for. So this was in Iceland. So you can see here that, you know, I'm lower down, and this wave, which is probably about, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters high, maybe 5 meters high, compared to this sea stack in the background, which is maybe 60 or 70 meters high, looks really majestic. So by getting quite low makes a really big difference. If I look at another shot here where I was really high, so this was in Cornwall, you can see shooting down on the wave here, I've created a very different shot. It's more like a vista shot with the wave being part of the environment. So height makes a really big difference when you're doing seascapes, so just bear that in mind. So the next thing is just think smaller, think about other things in your environment, maybe just look down. I was recently just chatting to Rachel Talibart, who, if you haven't seen her work, then there's a link in the description below. She is one of the worldwide best seascape photographers. Her images are just phenomenal. And there was an image that I saw actually on her Instagram profile called Touch, and it was this beautiful shot of this shell with the wave just sort of lapping over it, and it was a longer exposure with some beautiful light. It just looked amazing, as you can see. So I asked Rachel, I knew I was doing this video, so I asked her, you know, what is your top tip for shooting seascape? So I put this one in because it's so important, and that's patience. Just being patient. You will no doubt get lots of shots that don't work. I'm sure Rachel, for all those amazing shots she's got, has got a lot of shots that, you know, haven't worked because a lot of it's trial and error, and just having that patience to be able to, you know, just keep trying something, and you know, eventually you'll get something that works. So that was Rachel's top tip, and go and check out her work. It is phenomenal. Oh, the other thing that Rachel said, an extra tip really, is that when you're taking shots like this that are down by the beach, just watch for your reflection on the water or on the shell, because obviously you don't want to get your reflection in the shot. So just bear that in mind. It was another top tip that she gave me, and it's well worth bearing in mind. Okay, on to the fourth one, and that's light and how important light is. And that's just borne out by those morning shots that I got. You know, that backlit light is what made those shots. You know, we just looked at that shot from Rachel there. It's the light on that wave that makes it so phenomenal. You know, we're just looking at this shot here, and it was that light on here that looks so good. You know, again, these shots here look so good because of the backlit nature of them. Always think about that, always think about light. Just going to a location and thinking about how the light hits the land, and it might be that you don't want a lot of light. You know, it's not always good to have tons of light, but thinking about it and understanding how that light interacts with what you're shooting is really important. And the best way to do that is trial and error. I like shooting waves that are backlit. It makes a big difference, but that doesn't mean that you have to do that. So try different things. And then if you don't have any light, it doesn't mean you can't get an amazing shot. In fact, one of my favorite images that I shot from Madeira is a shot that I'm going to talk about now, which is a shot called Janela, which was shot of these amazing sea stacks. So let me just get it. So before I show you this print, I want to just talk a little bit about shooting with no light, because I think if you don't have any light, or you just maybe just have some reflected light, maybe you're in the shade, the bit that you're shooting is in the shade and you've got some blue reflected light, or sun's gone down, or it's just cloudy, then again, looking at how that light's interacting with the waves, maybe taking some shots and seeing what works, trying different angles, maybe trying to polarize it with or without a polarizer, can be a really interesting way of shooting things. Onto this shot here. So this was a shot that I'd actually gone here. It was the last evening, and I'd hoped that I'd be able to shoot this location, but I wasn't 100% sure I'd have time because I had lots of other things in my plan. And as I spoke about in the last video, I wanted to concentrate on 2 locations and get the best I can out of those, and then try other locations if possible. So I had one evening to go down to this. I had one night when it was almost dark gone and just wrecked it for 10 minutes. And yeah, I went down here, and I was hoping for the sun to come through this gap that you can see there, but it didn't. It went down just over to the left, and we didn't get any sunlight. So I just had to shoot with this flat light. But because the waves were coming up and all these rocks here were wet, and they were catching some of the reflected sort of tones in the sky, and there were some interesting blue tones in the sky and the rocks, I feel like it created a very moody, dramatic, something just a little bit different image. And yeah, I really like this image. It's one of my favorites. Now it is a stack of 4 images. So there was a slightly different wave pattern here that I stacked. There's this element here, and then there's a couple of focus stacks to get the sharpness in the rocks down here and the sharpness here. You can actually see, I'll show a digital version of it now as I'm talking, but you can actually see the bird on top of the stack there, which I didn't notice when I was shooting it, and then the detail of the little barnacles in the rock as well. It's so sharp, it looks so good printed big. So yeah, so this is going to be added into my print store. I'm really pleased that I can offer this shot now as a limited edition print, and I've actually added a few more that I want to show you as well. But before I do that, we're in lockdown now in the UK, so it means that we're not meant to go out apart from one form of exercise a day. And I am a professional photographer, but I want to sort of be within the spirit of that, and I can stay at home and edit or print things. So what I'm going to do is offer 25% off my prints for the next week. So if you are interested in a print, I'll show you the prints that I've added, then you can go to my store, they're linked in the description below, and you can get a print for 25% off. I offer them in A3, A2 and A1. So there's this one, which is Janela, which is fantastic. And there is and then there's this one here, which is Fennel Family, which yeah, I really like. The light just came through, and it created this really amazing atmosphere in the fog of this sort of orange glow. And these 5 trees here remind me of my family. I've got a little daughter. She's not that little now, she's 12, so she's running out in front. But yeah, this is Fennel Family, and I really like this. This is definitely going to be going up on my wall. Then there is the one that I showed in the video last week, which was this shot here, which is called Resting Time. So this was this bird that's just having a rest here on this amazing tree. This seemed to be a really popular print in the comments from last week. Everyone seemed to think this was really good. Yeah, I mean, I was so lucky on this. It's probably one of the best mornings photography I've ever had. Yeah, and this worked out really well. So I'm offering that. I spoke about this in last week's video, so you know all about this, A Passage in Time, and you can actually see Venus there as well in the sky and a few of the stars. This looks fantastic. And then the other one, the final one, is this one here, which is a shot that I took a couple of weeks ago, which is called Prima. I feel like it looks like a prima ballerina, and it was shot in these amazing sort of hoarfrost, snowy, misty conditions. It was really cold, and yeah, this just looks so good. Again, I think I'm going to put this on my wall. It's one of my favourite images from last year. So if you are interested, the link's in the description below with the offer code for 25% off. I really appreciate it. I've got nothing to do for the next week, so hopefully I'll be printing some prints. It helps me and my channel, and hopefully it'll give you something that you like, so it's beautiful to put on your wall. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching. Hope those tips have helped. And until next Sunday, bye.